The station should have been closed. That was the first thought that crossed Daniel's mind as he stood alone on the platform, surrounded by darkness and silence, thick enough to feel solid. No announcements echoed through the air, no distant footsteps, no flickering screens showing arrival times. Just a single platform light buzzing faintly above him, casting a pale circle onto the concrete. He checked his phone. No signal. The time displayed without context, as if even the network had abandoned the place. He tried to remember how he had arrived here, but the memory felt blurred, incomplete, waking up in the middle of a dream and trying to reconstruct the beginning. The tracks stretched endlessly into the darkness ahead, two black lines disappearing into nothing. Then the wind changed. A distant vibration passed through the ground beneath his feet. Subtle at first, barely noticeable, but unmistakable. Something was approaching. The train arrived without warning. No horn, no screech of metal. It simply emerged from the darkness, gliding into the station with unnatural smoothness. Its exterior was far older than any modern train, dark steel panels stained with time, windows opaque with grime and shadow. The doors slid open. Warm air spilled out, carrying a smell Daniel couldn't identify. Not decay, not smoke, something stale. Trapped. He hesitated. There was no conductor in sight, no other passengers boarding. Logic whispered that this was wrong, that trains did not arrive at abandoned stations in the middle of nowhere without explanation. But another part of him, quieter, deeper felt, pulled forward. He stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with a soft, final sound. The interior was dimly lit, the lights flickering as if struggling to stay alive. Rows of seats stretched on endlessly, far longer than the exterior of the train should have allowed. Every seat was occupied. Passengers sat upright, facing forward. None of them moved. Daniel walked slowly down the aisle. His footsteps sounded too loud, echoing unnaturally as if the space were hollow. He glanced at the faces he passed: men, women, children, elderly, frozen in perfect stillness. They looked alive. Their eyes were open, their skin intact, their expressions neutral. But something was missing. As Daniel watched, waiting for any sign of motion, he realized what unsettled him most. No one was breathing. Chests did not rise. No subtle movement of air passed through lips or noses. It was as if time itself had stopped for them, leaving their bodies suspended between moments. He chose an empty seat near the middle of the car and sat down carefully, as if sudden movement might break something fragile. The train began to move. Smoothly, silently. The station vanished behind them, swallowed by darkness. Through the windows, there was nothing to sign a landscape. No tunnels, no lights rushing past. Just black. Minutes passed. Daniel waited for the conductor. For an announcement, for any explanation. None came. He tried to stand. The moment he placed pressure on his legs, a sudden heaviness pressed down on him. Not physical force, but resistance, like pushing against deep water. His body obeyed reluctantly, allowing him only a few inches before forcing him back into the seat. Panic crept in slowly. He turned to the passenger beside him, a man in a dark coat with tired eyes fixed straight ahead. Up close, Daniel noticed details he had missed before. The man's pupils were slightly dilated, unfocused. His lips were parted just enough to suggest a breath that never came. Daniel waved a hand in front of the man's face. No reaction. The train continued forward. Time became meaningless, without windows, without announcements, without change. Daniel couldn't tell how long he had been sitting there. Minutes, hours, longer. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed further. A sound filled the car, not loud, but deep. A low hum that vibrated through Daniel's bones. The passengers began to move. Slowly. Mechanically. One by one, heads turned toward him. Every pair of eyes focused directly on his seat. The realization hit him like ice water. He was the only one who was supposed to be awake. A pressure built in his chest, instinctively forcing him to inhale sharply. The sound of his breath felt wrong in the silence, intrusive. The passengers did not blink. As the train moved deeper into darkness, Daniel became aware of something else. A faint sensation in the air movement. Not wind, not temperature. Presence. The far end of the car stretched impossibly long, dissolving into shadow. From within that darkness, something shifted. A shape formed, tall and indistinct, as if the darkness itself had learned to stand. It did not walk. It approached by simply being closer each time Daniel looked. The passengers remained motionless, but their attention followed the shape's advance. They were not afraid. They were waiting. Daniel understood then, without being told. This train did not carry people to destinations. It carried them away. The shape stopped several rows away from him. No features were visible, yet Daniel felt watched with complete certainty. The passengers had all arrived here the same way, at the wrong time, on the wrong platform. Believing they were still part of the living world, Daniel felt the train slow. For the first time since boarding, the darkness outside the windows shifted. A faint gray light appeared ahead. A station. This one was larger. Endless platforms extending in every direction. Thousands of trains stood motionless. Doors open, filled with silent passengers. The shape moved closer. The pressure on Daniel's chest intensified, his breath growing shallow. The resistance he had felt earlier returned, stronger now, pulling him back into the seat as if the train itself were claiming him. The doors opened. No announcement followed. Passengers began to stand, one row at a time, moving with synchronized precision. They exited calmly, filing onto the platform without sound. Daniel tried to scream. No sound came out. The shape loomed beside him now, not touching, not speaking, simply present. And in its presence, Daniel understood the truth. This was not punishment. This was process. The last train did not stop because it did not need to. Everyone who boarded it had already reached the end. As Daniel felt his breathing, slow chest rising one final time, his body relaxed into stillness. When the next living passenger would board, he too would sit upright, eyes open, waiting, not breathing.